All right, all right. All you beautiful people out there, thank you so much for joining us this Monday. It's a little chilly here in Florida, but we are super privileged to have Arthur Rauscher. How do you pronounce your last name?
That's correct.
Rauscher? Okay, I
Yeah,
did okay.
that's good.
Arthur is we've known Arthur. I've known Arthur for over 10 years, I'd say, here in Jupiter. He's an incredibly inspiring dad, entrepreneur, athlete. The guy's done absolutely everything. Not to mention, the reason why we're kind of getting him here today is he's overcome some of the most challenging things in life when it comes to cancer and knee replacements and you name it. And we really want to bring him on the show because he has an energy and a will and a drive that I think a lot of people can benefit from. And so we're super excited to have him on the show. And of course, we got the right hand man, Gwen. So, Arthur, thank you so much for being on the show.
Pleasure being here.
And Gwen, obviously, it's good to see you. We're all very lucky. It's Monday, Sunday here in Florida. We had a beautiful afternoon in Singer Island, kite surfing, and Arthur was out there killing it. It was huge waves and winds were probably 30 to 40 and just spectacular. But we're very lucky, very privileged. But let's get into this. Arthur, a little background on yourself, maybe just so the wonderful people out there can kind of get a little breakdown on maybe what's your age right now and kind of how long have you been, getting into these water sports and so on?
Well, I'm 65. I'm going to be 66 next month. I've been into kiteboarding. I learned how to kiteboard in the Dominican Republic in 2009. Went down there to learn the sport. I'm from Eastern Long Island, and at that point there was no one on Long Island that was actually teaching the sport. And I'm an old windsurfer, so I do have wind background where I was windsurfing for 18 years prior to that. Been to Margarita 3 times and things like that to windsurf. And but any event, I did that, and then I discovered Jupiter as a great place to kite in the ocean in a kiteboarding magazine. And there was those things when I was getting them at that point, they were like little Bibles, and I saw this vignette that was written by John Modica in there about how great Jupiter was. So I decided to jump on a plane and fly down. That was in 2010. And
No way.
bought a bank-owned home, and which was quite a wreck when I purchased it. But I'm in construction, so I renovated it and such. And that was the rest is history as far as being able to come down to Jupiter. I suppose when I first went down there, I didn't know anyone, but I didn't really care about that. And I'm sure that when everybody saw me down there, I was the kook on the beach, the latest one that showed up, and took a feeding in the Jupiter wash machine that you all call it. But I was bound to possess to be able to get out there and do it. And it's a lot of fun. It's challenging. There's no question about that. But I would definitely advise people that if they have any kind of desire to do it, and that's what it's all about in life is desire.
Yeah. Amen.
So your first experience on the water was like windsurfing. What drawn you to get in on the water with wind sports? Like, what was the motivation?
Well, I think that, Gwen, when I first saw people windsurfing, it drew me to the water because, being on the water all my life, living close to the water in Eastern Long Island, having boats, skiing, slalom skiing, things like that, wakeboarding and such. I think that the windsurfing was something that really intrigued me. I didn't have at that point when I jumped into that really any sailing background, but it intrigued me being able to harness the wind and ride a surfboard. So what I ended up doing was jumping in and buying a huge board and so forth in order to try to learn the sport. I think it was a 12-foot board. The thing was like a barge, and so I ended up coming down to Key Largo with my now wife, and myself out of windsurf. So it was something that I just thought it was just a tremendous amount of fun. It was challenging, looking back on it now, is going through the kiteboarding stage and learning how to kiteboard, and and so forth. Is it was a lot harder to do. But in any event, I was really wanted to do it, and then of course shortly thereafter, I started to really get into the sport and so on, and then Margarita, Venezuela, caught my eye as being a really great place to go. High wind, good bump and jump, really great place to go. This is back in '92. And so flew down there. And at that point, it was really third worldish, and but it was great conditions. I went there 3 years in a row, had a blast, and I would go in the middle of February. And because at that point, the businesses that I was in Long Island, it was the middle of the winter. So it was kind of a stagnant time of the year to be able to do the work that we were doing. So we would have the time to be able to get out of town, so to speak, and do those things,
That's beautiful. So everybody listening, we're going to get this thing going very exciting, because what I wanted to share today with Arthur and you guys is, Arthur has inspired myself 100%, because we see Arthur on the beach, and I've known him for a while, and we've seen him go through some very challenging physical, mental challenges and overcoming it like no other. And what I mean by that is, I've seen Arthur when he first showed up, and he was, kiting, wave riding on his directional surfboard. And then, he got into everything: surfing, paddling, SUP, you name it, whatever everybody's doing out there, Arthur's doing the same thing. And then Arthur had some setbacks, some injuries. And I think he can go a little more in depth on this, but he had a full knee replacement. And we're going to dive a little more in depth into, kind of his mind, his outlook. And then the next one I really want to capitalize on is he went through a very gnarly situation of cancer, to where I think the story everybody should hear, because it'll give anybody out there the realization that anything is possible. And I think truly miracles do happen. And I think we're very grateful to have Mr. Arthur here sharing the water like yesterday together. I think it's just spectacular. So maybe Arthur, you can go a little more in depth on maybe your how do you pronounce the cancer that you had?
It was peritoneal carcinoma. It had emanated, from the appendix. And, when you tell people that, I think, oh, well, that sounds simple. Just take the appendix out. Well, unfortunately, at that point, when it was diagnosed, it had spread throughout my entire peritoneal, which is a medical term for the abdominal cavity. So, it was already stage 4. And the reason why it got to be stage 4 is because there just aren't any symptoms until it gets to that point. And even at that point, there weren't any acute symptoms. They were still obtuse, and nothing that was really chronic where I felt like I was really sick. I just knew something wasn't right. But in any event, it was, I don't know how anybody, I really don't think anyone could ever be prepared for a diagnosis like that. I know I certainly wasn't.
Let me clear a picture for everybody, because when you spoke to me about this, and maybe this is a lot of information for everybody, but I think it's important. From the sound of it, you go and you have the surgery, and it's questionable. Outcome is questionable. For sure. It's a very challenging surgery, but it sounds like they literally take the organs out of your body, set them on a table, scrape off all the stuff, and then put them back in, and all right, Arthur, go get barreled.
yeah, that's pretty much put it in layman's terms. Maybe at the end of the day, the surgery lasted almost 11 hours.
11 hours.
Yeah. So which was something that was kind of unheard of. But in any event, I did have a surgical oncologist perform a procedure, and he was a highly skilled surgeon who had performed that procedure on several other patients previously, because it's also performed, for ovarian cancer and things of that nature, peritoneal types of cancer. But mine was quite advanced. So when he got in there, so to speak, and actually got to the root of the issue, he, it was worse than he thought it was going to be. He said my diaphragm was coated with it. All of my internal organs were coated. He said, in his words, he was scraping and chiseling.
Wow.
And so these are the things that he had to do in order to eradicate the cancer. He removed my gallbladder. As you know, we can do okay without that. Moved a lot of my liver, but a lot of that grows back. Moved part of my colon. You know, and so, but I survived it. He told me the only reason I survived is because I was in pretty good shape going into it. So I suppose that was a blessing. No question about it. No, I don't suppose it. I'm positive that was a blessing. So in any event,
How old were you at this point?
Excuse me?
How old were
What did
you?
you say, Gwen? I was
How old were
63.
you?
63. Yeah. No, I was 62. Excuse me. 62. So, you know, of course, it came to a shock. As I said before, when I first started, you know, discussing it, as far as getting a diagnosis, no one could possibly be prepared for such a diagnosis. But in any event, you know, at that point, once the surgery was over, then of course they treated me with a cutting edge type of chemo, and they call it HIPEC. And what that is it's a heated chemo. So they heat the chemo to 104 degrees, and then they actually circulate it throughout your entire peritoneal for 90 minutes.
What?
And then they actually have you on a table. And this is what was explained to me, because of course I was under anesthesia, so I didn't witness it. The table actually moves in all different directions in order to, you know, circulate and make sure that the chemo gets in all the nooks and crannies, so to speak, in order to eradicate any cancer cells that may be left behind that he wasn't able to scrape and chisel, as he said. And then at that point, he sews me back up and, you know, puts me into the ICU. And then I was in ICU for a week. And when I was in there, my heart went into atrial fibrillation one night.
That's because you didn't have a kite in your hands. You were like tweaking out. Your body's like, come on.
Yeah.
Get me back
that was
on
what
the
it
water.
was. Because I looked outside, I knew it was windy. So that's right. That's exactly right, David. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, these things, you know, it's just amazing that you were able to, obviously people go through these things and, you know, they're able to survive them, and it's just a whole different story after that. So it's, you know, I mean, you know, you survived a terrible traumatic accident yourself, so you can understand, you know, what I'm talking about somewhat, and relate to these things.
Yeah, well,
but you know, go ahead, David.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to say, you know, for everybody listening here, the reason Arthur's so inspiring is, like, if you see the guy, you said 60, turning 66, right?
I'll be 66 next month. Yes.
66 next month. Arthur rips, absolutely rips on the water. He started winging at what age?
65.
65. And he went through all this. And when I say, like, you know, he could barely walk on the beach after the surgery, I mean, I'm not saying he couldn't walk on the beach, but you could tell, you know, his body went through, you know, this challenge. And the only reason we want to bring this up to everybody is, you know, I truly believe your mind and your mental mind, physical health is so important to overcome so many things in life. And so, saying all this, obviously, one, I just want to say I'm super happy, Arthur, that we get to share the water with you. And I know, you know, obviously it's spectacular for yourself as well, but I can't thank you more for how many people you've inspired locally. Obviously, Doug Gamble chimed in, said you're a true inspiration, tough as nails, which totally agree. The dude's amazing. And so, diving more in depth in this, I wanted to ask you a few important questions. Did you ever have a moment when you were going through this process where you kind of wanted to give up? Like, what was your mindset, or was there never a thought of giving up?
You know, I don't believe there was ever a thought of giving up. I think that, you know, you know, when I sat down with the surgeon prior to the procedure, you know, he just simply told me it was going to be a tough procedure. One of his nurses started to show me the procedure, this YouTube, you know, video of the procedure, the actual procedure. And I started to watch it and realized that I just didn't want to see it. So, you know, I suppose it's just like not knowing, you know, you don't really want to know how the hot dogs are made, so to speak. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's sausage, so to speak. But I mean, you know, so I knew, I don't think I think there's many things in life, I mean, that if we knew how hard they were going to be, we probably wouldn't do them. I think that is in some instances.
Yep.
That said, looking back on what I went through, I can tell you this: I certainly wouldn't want to do it again. But
But
I
you
don't.
didn't really have a choice.
No, well, I didn't have a choice. No, and
That
I
was your
remember one of the
option.
things
You had
I
one
remember one of the
option.
things I said to the doctor is that, I knew after I had the diagnosis and we were able to, my wife was able to find this specialist who happened to be right here in Mount Sinai in
Yeah.
Jupiter, which was a blessing.
Yeah.
But anyway, when I first saw him, I remember one of the things I said to him was, "Doc, I want to get this out of me." And he looked at me right straight in the eye and he says, "That's what we're going to do," And so that was it. And it was brutal, but I was able to survive it and move on with it. And now I've been over 3 years now clean, cancer clean, and it's always nerve-wracking, so to speak, when I go for those scans. I'm sure that other cancer survivors can surely sympathize with that. There's no question about the fact that my late father used to say this all the time: I count my blessings.
Yeah, spot on.
It's crazy, like how what can be done, like in terms of like, I mean, this procedure, and I feel very grateful that this is even a possibility for us, when something like that happened. Now, how did like that experience change you on a like day-to-day life, today, like what's I'm sure there is a takeaway.
Yeah, there definitely is, Gwen. There's no question about that. I think I did touch on that when I was explaining just the procedure itself and what I went through. But going through it and coming out on the other side, so to speak, as I said, I count my blessings every day, and I've also touched on this aspect as well. Is that I've always tried to take good care of myself. I've always felt that fitness was a very important part of my life. And trying to stay active and fit. I used to be heavily into, road biking, bicycling, mountain biking, and always hit it really hard. I would do several hundred miles a week and doing the mountain biking and all that sort of thing. And then of course the windsurfing and those different sports that I've been into. But I always wanted to maintain, as you all know, it's very important to be able to have that level of fitness to be able to do those things, so to speak. And for me to be able to still do those things at this point in my life, to be able to be out there with you young whippersnappers, then I have to work really hard in order to do that. But it's and I suppose I guess I'm getting a bit off on a tangent. But to answer your question, Gwen, I suppose that I took the good health that I had for granted. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really well said.
And then when I lost it with that cancer diagnosis, and it was very sick subsequently after the surgery, I lost like 30, 40 pounds, and I was just so weak, and it was just awful. But in any event, I was able to come back. Then I realized what a blessing it was to health. To be able to enjoy the things that I always did enjoy, and to be able to make that comeback, Gwen. Like I said before, the things that I think that looking back on it prior to that, I think I took those things for granted. It's like I had the good health and didn't think a whole lot of it, although I did take care of myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I've had several injuries prior to that. Broken legs. I had a double compound fracture in my left leg when I was 23, and being on crutches all the time, and I was in traction. Just couldn't even walk. So. Those kind of things can really, set you back and then make you appreciate just the simple things of being able to walk, which is not simple. It's a big deal.
Yeah. No, I mean, to paint the picture for everybody, Arthur, very skilled human, but what I get from him for the time that I've known him is, it doesn't matter what's going on. He's going to give it a shot, or at least challenge himself to go out in the conditions, to try to paddle out, even if he doesn't catch a wave because it's not great conditions, but he's still going to make an effort, whether it's his mental or physical, just to go out and make sure, you know, he started the engine and got the blood flowing. And I think I've always admired that, because there's many days that I'm like looking at the waves and I'm like, and there's Arthur going out. I'm like, what? Seriously, he's charging out. It's like pumping out there. And I'm like, well, okay.
I mean, and even the fact that, like, you know, Arthur, like, you know, you were windsurfing and then you started kiting and then you started winging. So you are not scared of, like, you know, putting in the work to learn something new. But now what I would like to know is, you know, as you get older, like, let's say, you know, winging is the most recent thing that you just learned. Was there, like, I don't know, any doubt that, you know, am I too old to learn a new sport? Like, or was it for you, like, you know, no doubt, I'm going to learn this and I'm going to put in the work, and it might be harder for me, or, you know, for whatever, but you are ready to put in the work?
It was easy for you, right, Arthur?
You know, it's such an interesting question, Gwen, and I'm glad that you asked it, because, you know, there's no question about the fact that there was trepidation prior to, you know, me jumping into winging or wing foiling. And as you both know, well, I know Damien's well aware of it, is that I'd never done any foiling. So I had no foiling background at that point. Done some e-foiling, but as you both know, that's very different. But, you know, it's, you know, as far as jumping into the sport, you know, our great mutual friend Harry does it, and he's quite good at it. So you know, I talked to Harry quite extensively about it, and he explained.
You want to be better.
Excuse me.
Well, I want to be better.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And that would be a tall order. But in any event, you know, like I said, I talked to Harry extensively about it and did quite a bit of research before I jumped into that. But, you know, I'll tell you an interesting story. When I first learned how to kiteboard, which I was 54 when I learned how to kite, you know, I tore my rotator on my right shoulder, you know, shortly after I had learned. And so anyway, I went to this orthopedic, and I knew exactly what it was when I went in, had the MRI and so forth. And I remember sitting down with him and him telling me this. And I was 54 at the time, like I said. And he told me that he was going to have to do surgery, and that from that point on, that I was going to be a coach rather than a player the rest of my life. And that was exactly what he said to me. And I just looked at him and I thought, you got to be kidding. There's no way. It's not happening. And, you know, of course, I was going to PT at the time and so on and so forth. And I was working with this young PT and had a tremendous amount of confidence in him. And I really liked what he was telling me. And I suppose that some people would say, well, that was denial. You just wanted to hear what you wanted to hear and things of that nature. But in any event, to make a long story short, I just worked really hard. Never did have the surgery, although I had a torn supraspinatus and a torn labrum. Never had the surgery, and just was able to rehab it and get back out there and hit it hard. And, you know, I could still, you know, pump iron, I could do dips, all that stuff. So I suppose that's a bit of an anomaly. I don't know. But, you know, these things, I suppose, when you ask Gwen, you know, as I said before, I think in the beginning of our conversation, you know, these things, many things obviously have everything to do with your desire, you know. But I remember when I ran into a friend of mine when I was going to PT for this injury that I sustained, this torn rotator. And I met him when I was coming out of the office, and he asked me, what am I doing? So I told him what happened. I said, well, you know, I was learning how to kite. And he looked at me seriously and he says, aren't you a bit old for that? And I thought, you got to be kidding. I'm not dead yet. You know,
I'm not dead yet. That should be the quote forever right there.
Yeah. So I just, you know, I just laughed at myself thinking I'm 54 years old. Come on, give me a break, you know. But it's just, you know, and I'm still trying at 60. I'll be 66 next month, like I said. And I can't even believe it myself. But, you know, it's just a number, as people have said before. And so I just want to try to keep hitting as long as I possibly can, Gwen, you know. So
we had a few questions come in here, and Arthur, this is pretty cool. But David from Cuba, we appreciate you. Thanks so much. And you know, obviously we're super grateful to have Arthur on. Frank Long jumped in, said, Arthur, you know, would love to hear about your knee replacement and how you kind of got back on the water. Also, our legend rock star Harry Andrews jumped in and said you're his hero. So all good stuff there. But I'd love to well, here I'm just going to capitalize on this because I think it's important. But I asked you the question in the very beginning. I said, did you ever like want to give up potentially, or like, were you ever a little questionable? And just going through this interview right now for everybody listening in, I think you see the reason why Arthur gets through a lot of these things and the reason why he keeps progressing and he keeps trying and he keeps learning and he keeps driving towards it is because he's not dead yet. Like, keep living, keep trying. You never know. If the doctor says one thing, doesn't mean anything until you put your brain and your body into something. You can absolutely accomplish anything. And I truly mean that. Like, if you really want to do something, you really can do something. It just takes a lot of effort. For sure, there's some people that can probably do it easier than you, or maybe they're a little smarter in some ways, so it's quicker for them to learn that aspect of whatever it may be. But there's no reason why you can't do something in a life. And I think Arthur is a perfect living example of, 65, he started wing foiling. Wing foiling is like one of the hardest things I've ever done. Jesse Richmond got smoked and put up on a reef and like thought it was just going to be the easiest thing ever. And here's Arthur, living his best life, and he's not dead yet. So I think we all should take that and remember that. But let's go into knee replacement and what were your like fears coming back, anything that could help somebody out there that maybe went through a surgery and is nervous at their age of, call it 60s or whatever they're in.
Well, it's interesting with the knee replacement because, prior to the cancer diagnosis, I knew that my right knee was totally deteriorated at that point. I tried to push it as long as I can by getting those injections. And they worked for a long time. And it is still working in my left knee because I'm doing the best I can to nurse that along, but I know it's inevitable. So when I got the cancer diagnosis, right up until I got it, I was all set to get my right knee replaced. But then when I learned I had the cancer, the knee had to go to the back burner. So in any event, when I had the cancer surgery, which is October 31st, 2018, and I had to recover from that, which, by the grace of God, I was able to. And then I was back on the water by, let me see, I had the surgery was Halloween Day, 2018. I was back on the water by February, which was amazing. I couldn't use a waist harness because of the incision, so I had to wear a seat harness. But I was able to jump back in the water. And then my knee was still in really bad shape. That wasn't going to get better on its own. So I had scheduled the knee replacement. So I went in for that December 2nd, 2019. And that was a full knee replacement. And that was brutal. The pain was just incredibly brutal. But it was so worth it.
If you were to give 2 tips to somebody, is it all the physical therapy? It's just getting motion. What's the best eating right? What's the best thing you can give somebody out there?
Well, for me, going into the replacement, you want to make sure that you're in the best shape you possibly can. And I realize that can be tough having a bad wheel, so to speak. But you just want to try to stay as active as you can, maintain your fitness level the best you possibly can. Because as it is in any sport, no matter what it is and whatever injury you have, if you go into it and if you're able to go into it in really good condition, you're going to be able to bounce back and come back quickly. So, again, I was able to, I had that replacement December 2nd, and I was able to get back in the water. I remember the day I got back in the water, I heard, when I got out of the water, I heard about Kobe Bryant's accident. I think that was the end of February. So something like that. I remember I got out there and my good buddy Jerry talked me into getting in the water. He says, I know you can do it. And so I got back in and, it was tough, but I was able to, little by little get back in and inch my way back in and be able to do those things again. But, I think that when you ask the question as to advice to anyone that's got to have a joint replacement, it's so worth it. So worth it because I don't have any pain whatsoever. I can do pretty much anything that I could do before when I was in great shape, when I wore a younger man's clothes, so to speak. But so I would definitely highly recommend it. Don't be afraid of it because it's something that's so worth it because it just gives you, I don't mean to sound cliche, but it does give you a new lease on life because it's changed my life to have that new knee. It's dramatic how good it is,
I love it. I'm going to jump in here with Gwen, who always mentions this stuff, and Gwen obviously will love this, but we always talk about expectations. Like, you have a surgery or something. Did you have did you have expectations when you went after your surgery, after your knee replacement? Were you like, well, if I can just like mow the lawn back and forth, or maybe I can just get up on the wing and go one way or another? Or did you know that you could come back, or you always hoped, or you always knew that I can get back to where I want to be? What was your mindset? Or were you like, I'm okay with whatever today, if I can just maybe get wet and that's the best it can be? Or were you always like, I know I can get better, I know I can get better, I know I can get better? What's your mindset there?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, because the thing is that obviously there's people that are going to be curious as to what they're going to be able to do after a joint replacement, whether it be a shoulder, a hip, or a knee, or whatever it is. But I had researched it and had spoken to people that had had knee replacements. I remember talking to one guy that I saw get off the water, and he was surfing a shortboard, and we just struck up a conversation, and he had told me he had had both his knees replaced, and he was younger than me, but he was killing it. And he told me he also played tennis, and he played hard, and played pickup games of basketball and such. And so I thought, wow, that's inspiring, And I used to be a distance runner when I was younger. I used to run 8-10 miles a day on the beach when I was in my late 30s and early 40s, which is probably a contributing factor as to why I ruined my knees. But in any event, I loved it, So, and of course, as they say, that in every runner's future, there's always a bicycle, and for good reason. But those are the things that I had. So those are the expectations, Damien, that I had going into it, that I knew that once I got out of it, that I was going to be able to hit it hard and be able to get back in the ball game to do the things that I always loved to do.
Well, go ahead, Gwen.
So now you are about to be 66, and what's like your
Job.
your goal?
Like, what's my goal?
Yeah, what are you working on? Where do you want to see yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, the thing is that Damien said to me before, and I believe that you probably touched on it too. As far as my age is concerned, and what I wanted to do, and learning a new thing, and of course the winging and such, and of course me jumping into the winging, never foiling, and of course I see a lot of guys jumping into the winging now that don't have any real wind background, so obviously they're more or less probably in more of a different, more of a challenging level than I was, because they didn't have any wind background. But in any event, I want to be able to get better at the sport, and I'm referring to wing foiling, be able to nail my jibes, things of that nature, if I can be as good as Harry, then that'll be it. Then I'll go ahead and realize that, hey man, it's time to have a drink.
That's what we all say. That's the hard part. But see, now people are gonna be saying the same thing, Arthur. They're gonna be like, I want to be like Arthur. I'm just making it happen, living my best life. And I mean, I just wish I could paint a picture for everybody out here, because I'm privileged enough to know Arthur in the beginning and all the way through his challenges here. And I do remember one day in particular, and I'll just say this because I thought it was pretty spectacular. I think we were on a SUP, or you went out, and you had pretty rarely, you just came off your surgery. And I just remember how inspiring. I was like, wow, that dude, after your story, you said, all my internals were taken out. They scraped all the stuff off and like put it back in. And I'm just like, okay, I can't even fathom that. I don't even understand that. And how are you here right now? And now you're out there riding that wave. And like, I was just like, what, dude, our world is insane that, you can go through these setbacks in life and yet still live a good life. And I say that because it's not going to come to you, but you have to go work hard to make it happen. And I think, if we can leave people with this message of like, it's not like you just had a surgery and it was easy and you came out and you're now wing foiling. I mean, it for sure took hard work, eating right and working out and dedication to get up, but you did it. And here you are today. Well, yesterday, riding some massive waves in Singer Island on conditions that were for sure there was like 20 people on the beach that didn't even want to go out because it was very challenging. And even for myself, and John Modica was down there and he dropped his kite in the water.
Oh,
And
don't
it's
tell
like,
me he did that.
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, John. I love you to death. But everybody got freaked out because you're the professional. You're like the best guy out there. You dropped your kite and everybody's like, dude, he never drops his kite. We can't go out now. And
Well, that spooked me, you know.
but you went out and you're doing it. And I mean, I'd love to just capitalize in this. If somebody's fearing or questioning, or family or anybody wondering, should I get into wing foiling? What would be your answer at 65 years old, starting it right now? What would you tell them? Like if you saw them on the beach, what would you say?
You know, I would just tell them to definitely, you know, do the research on it, you know, watch some vids on it, and really, you know, get yourself enmeshed in the sport in that regard, so that this way here you can see whether it's something you really want to do. And I believe that, you know, with the proper instruction, and, you know, just some diligence and real study of the sport, that you're going to be able to jump into it and be able to really enjoy it. There's nothing easy about it. You know, I distinctly remember recall Harry telling me that it was the most difficult thing he'd ever done. So for me, you know, I didn't go into it, you know, with blinders. You know, I knew that it wasn't going to be easy by any sense of the word. It certainly isn't. You know, when you get out there and you're first, you know, getting on that board and getting thrown off of it and up and down and back and forth, it's a full body workout. So it's certainly, you know, you have to have some kind of you have to have a certain fitness level to do it. But that's not, so that shouldn't be trivialized at all, But you know, in any event, like I say, I would recommend. I just think that it's challenging, but it's super fun. I haven't gotten to the level where you fellas are at, where you're really, you know, going down the line and doing all these things that you're doing on the waves and being able to flag the wing and all that sort of thing. But I think that is, I just think it's so exciting. And
are you having fun where you're at right now with it?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely having fun. There's no question about it. I am. You know, I'll be honest with you though, Damien. There's certain times where I'm very frustrated with it. But I feel that, you know, for me I'm certainly not going to throw in the proverbial towel. I'm going to hang in there and keep chipping away at it. Each time I leave the water, I feel like I've learned a little something. You know, and try to get some instructions from you, Harry, and Gwen, and try to pick up as best I can from what I see on the beach and the different vids that I watch. Little by little, I feel that I'm gaining on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, you're definitely gaining. Gwen?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we talked about it before. Like, sometime the expectation of, you know, maybe you hear people that, you know, they learn wing foiling and within that much time they are doing that, and you are not. And so you had set your expectation based on that, and because you are not able to meet it, you know, you get frustrated and you want to give up. So I think it's always important to, like, you know, like, enjoy the process and be like you said, every time you go in, it might have been very challenging. You might not have been able to get to where you wanted to be, but in the end you still learned something, and in the end you still, you know, took one step in the right direction. So, you know, you can have all of the expectation that, you know, you want, but you can't go faster than, you know, what the process is for you. And I think it's important not to always, like, compare ourselves to somebody else, because we are not the same, and some people are going to learn faster and some people are going to learn slower. But the main part is, if you enjoy the process and if you are, like, you know, you are grateful. I was in the water, I was struggling, but, you know, I was still out there, and you know, I could be just sitting on my couch, or I could be just, I don't know, not even being able to do it at all. So, like, always being grateful for what we were able to do, and it's another day that we, you know, we were out there, and we are, like, getting closer to maybe where we want to be. you know.
Yeah, no question, Gwen. I mean, that's well said, well stated, because the thing is, in the same vein, what you were talking about, being grateful to be out there. For me, being able to, having gone through all these things, so to speak, with the, with the cancer and the knee replacement and such, and be able to be out there is huge. So that's a real big deal. In addition to that, to be able to learn something, be out there trying to learn to do something new. Now, I'll admit, at this point in my life, I don't have this cognitive ability that I had when I was your age. And that's definitely noticeable. There's no question about it. So that's a bit frustrating. But I wouldn't say to anyone that that's a factor to say, oh, well, I can't do it. It's like, it brings me back to what my, my friend said to me when I was, when I was 54 and I told him my rotator, and he said to me, I'm too old to learn how to kite. If I had given up at that point, then where would I be now? I don't think I'd be very happy. Of course, I never would have done it. But I mean, I think the thing is that, there's some people that embrace that, Gwen. You know what I mean? They embrace that aging process. And the way I look at it, I didn't make this up. I heard it said one time, we grow old because we stop playing. We don't stop playing because we grow old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's really well said. Doug from Doug Gamble says, Arthur, truthfully, you need to get off the live interview because it's blowing west of 20 and he needs you up at the causeway. So, we're sorry, Doug. We have to keep him a little bit longer because he's so awesome. David in Cuba, thanks for always chiming in. They say it the best too. Look, it's important thing. Here, I'll just read it for y'all. But the important thing is to be alive. The rest will come and everything is possible. And I think that's really well said because, we have to live. We don't know, what's going to come our way. Obviously, just like Arthur here, who has gone through so much and truthfully, still you see him at the beach and he's just like anybody else, just doing his best, trying his hardest, learning the most and enjoying the ride. And I think, I think that's why Gwen and I put all this together, and we're so privileged to have people like you, Arthur. And truthfully, I'm privileged to see you locally and ride with you and see your progressions and have little moments where I see you where you overcome something and I see you in the water and I'm just like, man, I hope one day, I'm 40 years old and, I hope I can be doing some of this stuff in the future, to the extent of just enjoying it. And I think that's my life goals is to just make sure I stay healthy and stay active. But all I can say, we always, we're passing our time here. We're going to kind of round this thing down, but I just wanted to say, first, I want to say, Arthur, thank you for inspiring so many. I don't think you realize how many people locally absolutely just are blown away. And it's kind of a weird one because it's like one of those things. Do you really want to go up to somebody and be like, hey, on something that's maybe like a touchy subject? So you try to not say something sometimes. And I think, I would say Gwen and I really wanted to say, look, we know how many people you've inspired and you've inspired us. I can tell you there's just no question. I mean, it brings tears to my eyes because it's like, I've been through some hard setbacks, but I just know that like, it's so cool to see you. It's 65 wing foiling and for sure we all know it's not easy, but you're doing it and just sharing a message with people about your drive and motivation. And I think that's so spectacular and I just can't thank you more. So just thank you very much, Arthur.
Well, I appreciate it. I enjoy being here, sharing my story.
I enjoy being here.
I do.
Then,
I mean, it's I'm flattered that you asked, to be honest with you, Damo. But in any event, if I can help inspire other people that are going through, some trials and tribulations, so to speak, injuries, some kind of an illness, things of that nature, because, it can really wreak havoc with your mind and with your mindset and cause you to really sink low into a depression. I'm not going to say that I wasn't there. I was. I'm not going to lie about that. I was deeply depressed and upset. And, when I first got that diagnosis, with the cancers, I didn't know where it was going. And so I didn't know whether I was going to be able to survive it.
Yeah.
So, there were all these thoughts that went through my mind, so all those kind of things, if you can make it to the other side, so to speak, I think that, me being able to do that myself, I think that if I'm able to inspire just one person by being on here today that might have some kind of a thing that they're going through right now, that's getting them down and making them feel bad about themselves, then that's huge, you know?
Yeah. Well,
I think it's an important thing to like see that, like, you know, it's not always perfect, and it's not always great, and sometimes, you know, sometimes you are depressed, and sometimes like you just like you know, don't feel good. But because like what we see today in our world is like we always see, you know, we will always see like the social media aspect, which is like, you know, people happy, people living their best life.
Yeah.
And that's great, but you know, that doesn't mean, you know, there is not another side to that, and that's the reality. So when you are in that phase and you are depressed, like, you shouldn't don't feel like, you know, it's you know, you are bad, or like, you know, everybody's better than you, and you are depressed, and you shouldn't be depressed, or like it just happens to everybody. And there's something, you know, it changes. When you feel depressed, it's not going to be like that for the rest of your life, and you can come back. So that's why we love to like show, you know, tell these stories of people that are like, that went through it,
Yeah.
and then they got out of it. Because
Yeah.
if
I
you
mean,
just look at social media, you just see everybody's best.
Yeah.
And then you
oh
don't.
yeah, everybody's having a
Should we-
party. You know, that's it. Yeah,
Should we start posting all the bad, and like maybe people realize it, you know?
Well, I think there is something good about, like, you know, you want to inspire people, so you want to show the positive side, you know, because that's important. But I think we shouldn't be we shouldn't hide the fact that things are not perfect all the time. And that's okay. And you know, the truth is, like, you know, if you are into that phase where maybe you are depressed, or you know, you're not happy, you know, sometimes we don't want to share it. But if you share it, especially, you know, you don't have to share it with the world, you don't have to share it with
Share it
people
with us,
you don't
call
know,
us, leave a message.
but share it with people that, you know, you care about, and people that care about you. Because in the end, like, don't keep it for yourself, because people want to help you. So I think that's an important thing, is like, there is no shame into being in that state. Like, it just, it's not something that doesn't happen to anybody but just you, you know. So it's important to be real. And I really appreciate, you know, your story, you know, like you, Arthur, coming here today and telling your story, because I know, you know, people can relate, and it's gonna help people
big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Absolutely. I think you're correct on that, because it's not all sunshine and lollipops, you know. So, you know, at the end of the day, but you know, when you're going through those sort of things like you were talking about, Gwen, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, you know. And I think that's something that people need to, you know, really concentrate on, you know, that are possibly going through something like that, you know, because there is.
Even if you don't see it.
That's right. That's right.
You know, Gwen hit it the best here, and Arthur just literally shined the light on it. But, you know, to anybody that's out there struggling with it, and I've mentioned it in many of these before, but I went through depression big time. And obviously, Arthur, when you go through issues with scenarios, it creeps in. And I think Gwen said it the best to everybody who's listening in right now.
Yep.
I don't care who you reach out to. I don't care if it's a normal dude on just anybody on the street. Open up. Just start. Just ask for help. Don't be afraid to open up. And I'm telling you, it'll change your world. And it's the hardest thing to do, because you're so in a bubble. You don't want to let anybody in. You're like, you just get into this weird zone. And I think,
and you don't want to be like vulnerable, you know?
You hold it in, and there's no need to. And I would say, if you're nervous or you're scared to do anything, I would say, shoot us a note through anything to our channel. We are here to help. And I mean that truthfully. We do message a lot of people. We get a lot of messages from a lot of people. And I say that with all truth, because I know how hard that can be. And I think just having somebody there is the best thing you can have happen. And Arthur, really appreciate being vulnerable and saying that, and letting people know the reality of it. And just, it's spectacular. We're going to switch over.
Damien, there's one thing I want to say that I didn't touch on, and I should have.
Let's hear it.
You know, in order to get through it, and you know, when you and Gwen were, you know, mentioning, you know, the dark days, so to speak, and the different, you know, areas that you might find yourself in when the times are like that. You know, and I had plenty of it. You know, before the surgery, I didn't know where it was going, and there was some really dark days. And with that diagnosis, I couldn't sleep. And I remember that all I wanted to do was rain every day, and you know, those kind of things. But my wife really helped me get through it. Okay, she was right there by my side. Okay, and she's a cancer survivor too. All right, and you know, and of course my buds, you know, and my girl and my daughters. But at the end of the day, I remember when I woke up in the ICU, you know, and Jerry was sitting there, you know, and you know, everybody came, the guys came to see me, and Ivy was there. She never left. She slept there, you know. So all those things are huge in order for you to be able to get through these things. You know, it's just a big deal. You know, it really is.
Well, you truly are an amazing human. We can't thank you more. And I have one last question that I've been waiting for a very long time to ask because it's very important. It's the most important question. Arthur has 2 daughters. Arthur, any advice for a new dad that has a daughter? what's your top advice you can give me? I mean, I dug a hole the other day and put her in it, and that was pretty good at the beach, and she couldn't go anywhere. That was kind of a top. That was pretty good.
You know, at the end of the day, Damien, you know, being a dad is a great experience. To witness the whole, you know, the birthing and all that sort of thing was just an awesome experience, and I couldn't stop talking about it. I'm sure I bored the heck out of people that I kept telling the story about the whole process. But you know, girls are great. I have 2 daughters, as you know, and 31 and 29 now. But you know, it was a heck of a ride, and it still is. You know, and I would, you know, it was. I have no regrets. It was all good. You know, I remember taking them out on the boat and all the things, teaching them how to swim, teaching them how to surf. They're both excellent swimmers. They both surf. They're both great athletes. You know, I'm sure that you'll be doing all these things. I remember I coached soccer. I coached basketball. You know, I couldn't.
It sounds like you just share them the lifestyle you live. Is that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, you do the best you can. Obviously, set an example and all that sort of thing, which you know you're doing now, and you will be doing. You know, so you know, you just try to do the best you can. You know, I know I wasn't perfect, but you know, I feel that I was there at the most important times that I could be. The birthday parties, all that sort of thing. Barney. I don't know if you even know who Barney is. It was a purple dinosaur that used to be on years ago when they were babies, you know. And I mean, you know, all those things, the Disney movies. I mean, it was just a lot of fun, you know. Cool. Looking back on it, it was all good stuff. That was I just would highly recommend it to anyone, you know, to not go through life. You know, if you have to go through life with no children, I mean, obviously there's some people that can't, but you know, I think that it's a great thing. So it's exciting, Damien, every single day, you know.
Well, thank you. I'm loving it. I'm very grateful. And, you know, as we wrap this thing up, I just want to say again, Arthur, thank you for that. Being vulnerable. I mean, Doug, I agree 100%. You know, Arthur, you opened up your mental health and reaching out and letting people kind of see that, you know, that's an important thing in life that nobody talks about, and being vulnerable. I think Gwen nailed that. You know, on this note, we're gonna jump over to our Patreon channel, and we can't thank everybody out there for all the support and your messages and your, you know, thoughts on all this. Our goal is really to help people, and hopefully, you know, obviously 2022 is going to be an awesome year, and hopefully we can help you make it even better. And with amazing humans like Arthur here, if you see him on the beach, make sure to shake his hand. He's an awesome human, and he may not be on the beach. Actually, he may be in the water ripping the waves, but maybe he'll come in at one point. But on that note, we just want to say thank you, everybody. Thank you, Arthur. And we're going to jump into our patron, and our patron, Gwen, can kind of go through it.
Yeah. So if you want to become part of our Patreon, basically it's a way to support what we do for as little as $5 a month. So it's a subscription program. And there are several levels. You get access to early access to our videos every week, and you get access to the private post show that we do every time with our guests. So right now we're gonna go with Arthur on our post show. That's only that you can only access if you are part of our Patreon. And so check out the link in the description if you want to do that. But if not, we'll be back next week, or actually we'll be back Thursday with another guest.
Yes. So thank you, Arthur. You rock. We're going to chime in, jump into another one, but thank you, Arthur, for opening up. That was absolutely the best way to start a Monday.
Pleasure being here, Damo. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you all on Thursday.